Da-da-da-da. We're live. Welcome in, everybody. It's Friday, Community Forum. Sorry we're a little late. I was adjusting the title and the thumbnail because I'm a freaking YouTuber now. And something just happened. The Munro live team just dropped a video about an hour ago, and I was able to catch it right before I came on, and Hans hasn't watched it yet. And I really think part of this Community Forum is for those of us that haven't watched it yet, is to watch that video, because Sandy Munro is somebody that has been, if you're not familiar with him, he is an industry expert in the automotive field. The Munro team over at Munro Live, if you have a chance, producer wife, bring up their YouTube. I have a link to the private chat. Please go make sure you subscribe to their channel, because it is a phenomenal resource. And if you're familiar with the Tesla story recently, you know that Tesla lowered their pricing last week, Hans? How long has it been now? Something like that?
Yeah, last week.
Last week. And he just dropped a video, Sandy, literally about an hour ago, that I want Hans to react to. I saw it, and I want us to sort of watch that. So before we even do that, Hans is a member of our community, and Fridays we do community forums. Today is just the two of us, but that's okay, because we're going to have a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
So if I have one person or 10 people, I'm just grateful to have folks that are part of the community that are willing to come on live with me. So thank you, Hans, for joining me. I'm really looking forward to speaking with you today.
Likewise.
Yeah, man. All right. So actually, let's just go ahead and react to Sandy's video right away. So Hans hasn't watched it yet. I gave him one little tidbit from the video to kind of get him prepped as to why this video is kind of, I think it's a big deal. And if you haven't watched it in the comments yet, feel free to jump off this video and go watch it on their YouTube, so that they get the views and the whatever monetization and stuff, because they deserve every penny they earn. I can't believe their stuff is free, to be completely honest. But let's go ahead and play the video. And maybe I'll have you pause from time to time, producer wife, or Hans, if you want to pause it anywhere, maybe like give a wave or something, and then so we can react.
And
to
I'm
going
to take notes as we go along. And then for the audience, I do have an engineering degree, but I haven't been a practicing engineer, so we'll call me the pseudo engineer on the panel today. And but yeah, I have watched almost everything that Munro Live has ever put out, so I do have a lot of context as to where Sandy and team are going to be coming from here.
Fantastic. Okay. All right. And then, let's go ahead and I'm guessing you made sure that the audio is on when you share a screen, producer wife. So go ahead and play the video, and let's react. New graphic.
Okay. Let me just get straightened around here. Hey, boys and girls, welcome back to Munro Live. Today I'm with Corey, and what we're going to do is dispel a few of the things that I wouldn't say they're nasty grams, but I don't like to be told that really I don't know what I'm talking about. Or let me rephrase that, we don't know what we're talking about. And this is regarding the Tesla, the Tesla drop in price. So what I want to do is I want to discuss a little bit about how we get what we get. This, and this, and this, and more. And there's two more of these things. I couldn't find them. But anyways, there's two more of these things. And if you look inside, guess what? I have the price of every detail, every screw, every nut, bolt, little teeny tiny plastic injection molding, castings.
Every chip. This is a actual, we look at each board and look at every chip to do a bill of material for all the circuit boards as well.
So some very knowledgeable guy, I guess, he put out some stuff about how he and his friend sat down in an afternoon, and on the back of an envelope or a napkin, they figured out how much everything's going to cost at Tesla. Really? Really? That's the guy I don't want doing my taxes. I don't want any accountant telling me that, oh yeah, your taxes are about $10,000 or $2,000. Oh, maybe I'll pull another number out of my and I'll give you that. At the end of the day, we know exactly how much everything costs. And we also know what things normally people buy from the outside and what Tesla is making because they're vertically integrated. I don't get too upset too often, but all we really sell is integrity. Corey and I will talk to you all day long about what we can do and how we can do it. And we have real numbers to back it up, not a bunch of characters that somehow, even though they don't drive, they have no idea what goes inside a factory, never worked on design of any kind of a product ever in their whole life. I don't even know how many products I've helped design. I can tell you for sure, though, I'm getting worked up. So, Corey, Corey,
and our numbers aren't static. So when we got the Tesla Model 3 in 2018, we costed it at that point in time with the numbers that the world had for material costs and manufacturing costs. When we did the Model Y in 2020, things had started to change. When we updated our model for the 2022 Model Y, we even took in some of the inflationary factors.
Right. Yeah.
So what's really important is you can't take numbers from a point in time in 2018 or even 2015 and just extrapolate or interpolate. You have to continually refine our craft. And that's what we do here at Munro & Associates. Yeah. We have a team of nearly 100 people that's what we are doing. We have our pulse on the wiring industry. We have our pulse on the materials that go into castings, everything, the machinery costs, the labor rates in different countries.
Even the suppliers of like Hydra and
Yeah, and so when he's saying that they have their pulse on what's going on in all of these industries, it's not just they're keeping track of it. They are literally doing consultation work for people in maybe not all of these industries, but at least a good number of them. And so these are their direct customers. They have direct relationships with these people that are in these industries. And so the pulse that he's talking about that they have is not some third party at a distance pulse. Like, they're directly involved and they know what they're talking about.
Yep. Thanks. Keep going. Oh, you want to keep going, producer wife? There we go. Oh, we had to bring in Rodman. What's up, brother?
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
all the other different suppliers of machine tools and whatnot. We have everything. When we give you a number, it's dead accurate. There's no room for anything, for any kind of a wiggle. And we do it in a conservative way. In other words, we know that Tesla is getting aluminum cheaper than everybody else. And the reason for that is because a long time ago, they made deals with the aluminum companies and they use special aluminums that only have their alloys in them. However, in order to keep it light and lively, we kind of like use what you can get off of the normal aluminum that would be sold. Yeah, the aluminum market is volatile. It goes up and down a lot. However, if you make a long-term commitment to an aluminum company, you get it at a different rate. And we know that. So what I'm going to give you are the conservative numbers we have right now. But I absolutely flat out know that Tesla is probably looking at 40% gross profit. And because they don't do any, by the way, the general accepted number for marketing and sales of a vehicle is not sales, but marketing of a vehicle is probably somewhere around $600. The other number that you see that is kind of like different than everybody else is how much they have to pay the dealerships. They don't pay any dealerships. Now they've got the service centers and stuff like that, but that's peanuts in comparison. And quite frankly, service centers can make you money.
Yeah, and Sandy, dealerships in the state of Michigan, what are some of the richest private companies?
Not some of the richest.
The richest companies in Michigan are typically dealership networks.
That's correct.
I don't want to name them, but if you look at medium-sized businesses or privately owned businesses, it's dealership network, dealership network, dealership network, dealership network.
Can you stop it there?
Where did they get all of those?
Okay, so two things that I heard so far, and just with full transparency, I did watch the video before I came on. Hans hasn't watched it yet. Rodman, did you watch this video yet? You haven't. Okay, so we have two people reacting to it fully. So the two things that jumped out so far for me is 40% gross profit, which I know from the video this is after it's after the price cuts, and then there is an embedded profit siphoning sort of thing that's has been happening in the auto market for what's now 100 years. It sounds like that you have a dealership structure that has been holding essentially auto manufacturers hostage in a way to be able to really bring their prices down to a level where the manufacturer can make a bunch of money and they can make and call it an affordable vehicle for the masses. In other words, by the dealership networks existing, they are preventing the net cost of a vehicle to be as low as possible for the consumer. Did you guys have any comments on what's been said so far? Or do you guys want to keep watching the video? It's completely up to you. We can keep going, or we can throw in a reaction if you'd like. So nobody's coming off mute. Okay, keep on going.
Hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe near billions of dollars if they're a large conglomerate. It's from pulling that cash off of the price of the vehicle for the last 30, 40, 50, 60 years.
Exactly. And so we look at these numbers and we say, okay, Tesla sold a vehicle for $49,000. Okay, that's what the sticker price is. But Tesla gets extra revenue. If you want to buy full self-driving, that's another 10 grand.
15 grand.
15 grand now. 15 grand. That's clean, pure profit. Does that show up in the sale? No, it doesn't. But that's where my 40% is coming from, and maybe even more than that. Tesla is rolling in dough. I don't know where they hide it or how they do what they do, but I can tell you right now, I work for several different big automotive companies in Europe, in Japan, and here in the United States. And I can tell you what, nobody can do that. Nobody, absolutely nobody. So I'm going to read off some stuff that Jordan gave me just a few minutes ago. This is the uber conservative numbers that he came up with, uber conservative. And I'm blind because of that light. I cannot read a damn thing. Can you read that?
Read it.
I want to know, it's 31% and 33%, right?
So we got 31% gross margin on a 2018 Tesla Model 3 long range rear wheel drive, pre-heat pump. And then we have a 33% gross margin on a 2022 Model Y with a heat pump. That's based on a vehicle price that's in line with the price cuts.
Yeah, yes, exactly right.
Can you pause it real quick
and
go back to that frame where they had those charts up for me? Back a little bit more. Yeah, right there. Back a little bit further. There, perfect. Okay, so let's make sure we digest this correctly. So we have a 2018 Tesla Model 3 long-range rear-wheel drive at a price of starting at $49,000. Munro's estimating that car from that time cost Tesla $33,000, and the $15,000 additional that they charged, the Tesla charged to get up to the $49,000 is what they took back as profit, which is at $15,400, which makes it 31%. So 31% of the total price is what's called gross margin, and so they're making $15,000. Now this is a 2022 Tesla Model Y, which is a $58,990, and I'm trying to find. Let me see what this spec is. So I'm pulling up the order now page just to hone in exactly what they're looking at here. So I have a Model Y long range. I'm seeing 52.9. And I'm trying to find one that's 58.9. So maybe they're assuming some level of, I don't know, additional order take rate when it comes to options, tow hitch. Maybe the performance model is 56.9, it's a little bit closer. What do you think, Rodman?
Yeah, I was just going to say the performance is already 56. So, yeah.
Okay.
This number.
You're really soft, by the way. Your mic's super soft. Yeah. It's very hard to hear you.
Yeah. So, is that better?
A little bit better, yeah.
Okay, I'll turn up the gain.
Yeah, that's much better.
Okay, cool. So
Yeah, I was just saying the model, the performance is 56, right?
Mhm.
So I think this is just out of date. But like, even if you chop off, like it's down to 52,990 starting.
Yep.
So like, even if you chop 6,000 off of that, right? So that's
13,000.
still 13, 14,000,
Mm.
which is still off of 40,000. You're still talking what, like
Yeah, so let me do the
25%?
math real quick here, right? So 19.5 minus $6,000, call it. And then that's divided onto what, at 52. It would really be on 52.9 on the new price, right? Because it would be $13,000 profit on, so it'd be 52.9. So then it's about 20. So that would be 26% margins if the estimated Munro cost holds steady. It's 25% margin on the Model Y long range all wheel drive specification if the Munro estimated costs are correct. Go ahead, Hans.
Yeah, they're referring to the specific Model Y that they tore down in 2022, and I think that's the price. The 58,990 was probably the price that Model Y was that they tore
I see.
down at the point that they tore it down. So this is, all of these numbers are going to be based on work that they did, and so they did tear down a Model 3 in 2018. And so that's why they're going to compare things that are not necessarily apples to apples, because they didn't have a Model Y to tear down in 2018. I think they did tear down a subsequent Model 3 eventually, but I think the Model Y is the most recent thing that they tore down besides the S Plaid, which they're obviously not going to throw up here for comparison.
So, do we know if this is the Model Y long range all wheel drive, the one on the right? Do they say?
I can't remember if they said. I was trying to look.
I think it
Go back a few seconds, producer wife, and play that section again for us. Yeah, like right there.
3%, right?
So we
Or
got
go back a little bit more.
31% gross.
Conservative.
Yeah, right there.
And I'm blind because of that light. I cannot read a damn thing. Can you read
Come on,
that?
Sandy, get your glasses.
I want to know. It's 31% and
Oh, yeah.
33%, right?
So we got 31% gross margin on a 2018 Tesla Model 3 long range rear wheel drive pre-heat pump. And then we have a 33% gross margin on a 2022 Model Y with a heat pump. That's based on a vehicle price that's in line with the price cuts.
Yeah, yes, exactly right. So we look at that and we say,
Okay, pause it.
That's number.
Okay, so it's got to be long range all wheel drive because I believe that's really the only spec that Tesla had for the last 2 years, really, in the United States to purchase, and the performance, right? So is that a safe assumption? Would you say?
I think so.
Yeah. So then if you go back to that chart again, producer wife, real quick. So let's see a little bit further along. Perfect. So 39,393. So 39,393. So I'm taking the Munro estimated cost, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, producer wife as well. So if you can bring up my screen, that would be great. So we have what the Model Y long range is now. Let me make this bigger so you all can see what stupid math I'm doing. So 29.9, and if we assume that this cost is somehow is somewhere around the same, it's actually probably lower because of deflation and all that stuff. On that cost from that 2022 model they tore down, the Model Y long range all-wheel drive is at 26% margins with the price decrease. Price decrease, okay? If you assume, I don't know, like say this is, I don't know, 5% less from deflation for the last year, then you're up to 30%, almost 30% margins, right? So depending on how much Tesla is able to bring down this cost for the Model Y through Berlin scaling, Austin scaling, then that 39 suddenly turns into something less than 39. I think that's probably a safe assumption to make, which assumes a almost 30% margin for the Model Y long range all-wheel drive without any additional options from its base price. So I just wanted to outline that for all of us to be on the same page. So even with these price decreases, if Munro's costs are somewhat accurate and our assumptions are somewhat accurate, theoretically, Tesla could be making still 30% margins on the Model Y long range all-wheel drive.
So I think this might actually be the
You can bring me down.
Standard range. Standard range. Wait. Standard range all-wheel drive. So can I share my screen? Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
So present. Share screen.
Did they have a standard range all-wheel drive for us?
They had a 4680 pack and structural gigacasting, so I think they might have gotten one of the few of the Giga Austin made Model Ys.
Yeah, they tore that one down and then they pulled all the cells out, right? So
okay.
So I think you're right. I think that is the only thing that was the standard range. Yeah. The 4680
with
pack Model Y was
4680.
just a standard range Model Y. That's right.
So if you zoom in on the Model Y part, maybe I can do that. Let me do that. So
yeah, if you do the 3 dots and you do like the zoom, or you can do that too. Yeah, whatever that is.
So I think that's this guy, and this is from July 2022, and then these are the months that I was actually tracking, but something like that. Even though was his price 58, but I guess it's pretty close.
58. It's about the same. So we think it's that 4680 standard range car that they broke down that they're saying it's 39,000 cost. Okay.
Yeah. That would be my assumption. I could definitely be wrong there.
But like if I go back here to like March 22, like even back here in March 2022, the price of the long range is already 63. So like the last time, like the earliest I've checked is 53,990, and that was back in September of 2021.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So it would be interesting to know, like, and I don't know if this is something we can come up with in the video, or maybe if somebody's watching could let us know where we could figure this out, but how much more the cost of the Model Y long range all-wheel drive would be than the cost of the one they tore down with like sort of the initial 4680 ramp. I mean, I'm assuming the 4680, the one they tore down, is probably a little bit cheaper than the Model Y long range all-wheel drive, probably by a couple thousand, which would bring down the gross margin closer to 20% on the base sort of Model Y long range. But all right, let's keep watching the video and then see what else is said here, and then we'll keep going.
Tesla Model 3 long range rear-wheel drive pre-heat pump, and then we have a 33% gross margin on a 2022 Model Y with a heat pump. That's based on a vehicle price that's in line with the price cuts.
Yeah, yes, exactly right. So we look at that and we say, okay, that's that's the first number, and 31 and 33% is the first number. The second number is what's the add-on, the second bite of the apple, and in some cases a third and fourth bite of the apple that Tesla gets and nobody else gets. 15 plus a couple of grand, plus a couple of grand, plus a couple of grand. And there's no cost in here, none whatsoever. Elon puts out a little tweet and says, hey, you want to get full self-driving? It costs this much. You want to get this? Want to get that? It costs this much. Want to get some of these features and functions? Want to get some of the swag that comes along with it? This much, that much. Who gets that? Nobody. Nobody. $600. Remember, I told you a second ago, $600 is what you pay for marketing of a car, and they don't have to do it. So when you look at gross margins for a normal car, you basically say, I started with, let's say somebody out there has got 30%, which they don't, 30% margin, you'd whack it, and you'd wind up at the end of the day with about 3 or 4% net profit. How much does Tesla make in net profit? Take a wild guess. If you're less than 20%, you're a fool. You don't know what you're talking about. That's the starting point. Now you go on top of it. So when I said that Tesla could cut their profits in half and still make more money than any car company on the planet, I am not kidding you. And if you don't believe that, ask the guys over at VW with the ID4. The ID4 now is $4,000 more expensive than a Model Y. Who in the hell is going to buy the Model Y? Or sorry, who's going to buy an ID4 if I can get a Model Y with the best charging systems on the planet, with all the right things going for it, with the fact that they're probably going to beat everybody to full self-driving eventually. And Anyway, I'm starting to rattle on. Why don't you take over?
Yeah, so this has been a big topic this week, and I want to thank Farzad. He had me on his channel earlier, I think a couple days ago. We had an hour and 30-minute conversation, particularly on some of these topics. We truly do know what things cost. And a lot of people will essentially talk based off of a napkin.
Yes. Anybody who's ever seen Pet Detective, I wanted to do it all by myself when he started talking about talking through your, and but they won't let me do that here. Apparently it's degrading and the woke people will get all upset and stuff like that. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do the talking through my thing. But if you go to Jim Carrey, who's, kind of like a Hollywood guy, and you go to Pet Detective and you go and see him, he talks through his, and that is precisely what I'm getting when I see people, the last one, I could not delete the email fast enough. I can't believe that people can be so incredibly stupid, and they're the ones who are telling the market what to do. What, are you kidding me? Are you joking? This is the best move that Tesla could possibly make. They will annihilate their competition because their cars are cheaper than anybody else can make them. And now they're cheaper than that. How is anybody going to be able to compete? At the end of the day, the 40% is what I'm going to roll with, because I believe that that's probably what they're going to have, maybe even more than that. And I believe that if they don't make 20% actually on that, that they might make even more, like 22, 23%.
Now, I have a
net
question.
Profit.
Cybertruck. Cybertruck, not Tesla Semi.
all right.
What do you think on the Cybertruck?
Pause it for a second.
So yesterday,
because this is going to be a whole different thing. 40%. So Sandy, you guys tell me if I heard this wrong. So Sandy's saying that after these price decreases, and with Tesla's economies of scale, and with Tesla's ability to upcharge the customer at zero cost with options and full self-driving and stuff, he thinks that Tesla should be able to achieve 40% margins and 20% plus net income margins. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, and it's not just FSD, it's also like the performance enhancement upgrades and all of those software locked features that don't get a whole lot of attention within the Tesla community. Other drivers talk about how much they love it, but we don't really focus too much on how much that income flows directly through into net profits.
Okay. So what do you guys think of that statement from Sandy just now?
I think it's reasonable. So if you say $15,000 is what they're charging for FSD, which I don't think is going to be what they charge, and I don't know what Sandy is anticipating for the terminal rate of the value of FSD. But if we take it at $15,000 and we look at the prices of the Model Y and the Model 3, that right there is, is $19,000 worth of profit on the Model Y. Well, $15,000 would almost double that, not quite. And that was 33% margin. So, he's assigning most of that value, that 40% is derived from sales. I would anticipate. I mean, maybe, I don't know. It also depends on what his assumptions are for take rate, but don't misinterpret Sandy to mean that he's expecting 25 to 30% gross margins without those software sales. So it could be somewhere in the 15 to 20 to 22, 23% gross margin range before FSD and performance.
Okay. Rodman, any sort of thoughts, what you have heard so far?
Yeah, it's just taking me back to like your conversation with Corey. I think one of his points that like I was kind of a little bit like not unsure about, at least, was like Corey saying that like Model S and Model X, since they have such high profit margins because they're such like, the price of those cars, the cost of goods is higher, but like it's disproportionately higher to how much they charge for them. But I just feel like it's such a small percentage of the mix that like that part stands out to me. As far as anything that's been said today, it's I mean, like we won't know until we see actual numbers. So, but I mean, I think all the theory is good. I mean, like the price is going to be dropping. They have a very clear idea about what each of those prices are. And we expect that Tesla will continue reducing prices. And we do expect some pressures from like the input costs to go up. Well, we just don't know, right? Because like we don't know if those inflation prices, and I think also Tesla has said that it does take time for those to roll through to their lines too, right? So even though the spot price might be down today, but it may not roll through in their
supply chain.
But it works in reverse as well. That was one of the great videos this week that Matt Smith did with Brad Ferguson. And they were talking about how when they were backing into model and tying it out to gross margins in Q3, that what they realized was that the ASPs were indicating that a lot of the price increases that we've seen hadn't really flowed through. And so like there is this lag time in ASP in a quarter, since one of the points that they made was there was I don't know what the fleet buyer was, but they took delivery of like 1,000 Teslas in the quarter, and they took them at prices from, I think, early 2022, if not, no, it may have even been ordered in like 2021. And so they were like significantly reduced prices that they were finally being delivered. And so, basically because Tesla has such a large number of orders, and then they have such large contracts with their suppliers, their cost of goods sold and their ASP mix is going to be much more. It's like we're looking at these spikes or decreases that are very sudden and instantaneous in either pricing or whatever, but their actual cost and their actual margins are going to be much more like a weighted average over a long period of time that is much harder to drastically increase or reduce in any 1 month, 2 month, quarter to quarter type time frame. Yeah.
I think this Q4 report, I really believe it's going to give us so much insight into how Q1 and the future quarters are going to shake out. Because if it really does, if there really was a situation where a lot of the increased pricing wasn't taken until very recently, and say like tail end of Q3 into Q4, then that should imply a pretty severe margin increase in Q4 in some respects, or at least some sort of modest increase in the face of the different pricing incentives that Tesla had towards the end of the quarter. So there should be like a surprise on the upside for the margins. And if that's the case, then theoretically that we should deduce how Q1 and onwards margin impact is going to be based on that Q4 report. If we see that, I mean, whatever happens, right? If it goes lower, that to me is like a red flag that says, okay, what's going on? like, okay, so where is that increased pricing that they were taking? So that to me means is that customers are actually going down market in their trims. So they're not buying your performances. They're not buying your long ranges. They're buying the lower mixed products.
So I do expect ASP to reduce into Q4, but maybe not as much as it would have, because it's more of a function of model mix. And as they continue to ramp Model Y and Model 3, that is going to put a lot of downward pressure on ASPs, even if those Model 3 and Model Y cars are now being sold at increased prices relative to Q3. And so I think that will override the ASP, but they should be tailwinds so you might see increasing gross margins on decreasing ASPs, right? If that's the case. Got it.
Okay. Producer wife in the private chat. The real question is, when do we get a secret fridge tour of Hans? We'll save that for bonus content for Patreon. Just kidding. That's for Hans's freaking channel. Come on now.
Exactly.
All right. Any more comments before Cybertruck? We hit Cybertruck here from Sandy.
Yeah, I think what you guys said is like right on. Like this will be a good point of reference to make predictions about Q1. But like we're really just not gonna, like, you can make as many guesses as you want, but we'll probably all be wrong. So
The one thing that I did want to say actually was just that I put a lot more stock in Sandy's 40% prediction on gross margin than anybody on Wall Street. And that includes awesome people like Pierre Ferragu and
Adam Jonas and all those guys.
Adam Jones. Yeah, like some of the people that are really good.
Gary Black.
They're decent, but yeah, they don't know the actual cost structure of things soup to nuts like Sandy does. And I'm sorry, someone who has worked with the experience that Sandy has from tool and die making as a kid all the way up through a car manufacturer, like he knows inside and out what goes into how these cars get made, and then also all the politics. And so when he's talking about people talking out their butts and doing stupid things, it's because he's witnessed it up close and personal a bunch of times, and he obviously has disdain for people, which reflects the fact that that's not what he's doing. Like, he knows that there's a way to go about understanding the cost of these products, and he has disdain for people who are trying to say this is what it costs, who haven't done the due diligence necessary to say that with any sort of rigor.
And he has the credibility too to do that, right? Because he was one of the very first ones that openly shat on the Model 3 with that initial build. He's like, this is a piece of junk. And then he went in the internals, is like, except for the internals, which are like literally state of the art. And now I see why Tesla is going to be super successful. And I think his track record of describing what is going to happen to Tesla in the long term has been the most accurate out of anybody covering Tesla, period. Because he knows what's in the car down to the nuts. That makes sense. That's a very valuable resource for folks that are looking to potentially invest in the company, not financial advice. But yeah, Sandy and Corey especially. Corey is, I think, extremely underrated. Sandy's a legend, but Corey, man, he's phenomenal. Those two are really a gift to the investing community, period. Forget Tesla investing. The investing community, period, especially in the auto market. That's awesome. All right, keep going. Good?
Cybertruck.
All right, let's do it.
Yesterday, Corey and I pulled a number out of our butts. And my number was 35%. Corey didn't tell me his. I said 35%. What did you say?
I said 37 when Farzad asked me the same question a few days ago.
Yeah.
I had a ton of qualifiers. I said, first of all, we don't have the vehicle yet. Yeah. We haven't costed it. I don't know what the model mix will be. So you're gonna have the quad motor, the tri motor, the dual motor. How big is the battery pack? That model mix is highly dependent on the average transaction cost, not transaction price, and the transaction price. So with my rough math, I figured out what that mix would be for cost and price, and I came to about 37%.
So here's the thing. Anytime you've got a truck, you're going to pay more money, and there's way more profit in it. If you don't think for a second that Ford's move to electrify the F-150 wasn't the most brilliant move by any automotive company apart from Tesla, any company in the world, you're out of your mind. Ford made a genius move with the F-150, genius, and I can tell you for sure that they are moving faster on electrification than any of the other OEMs that we know of. None of them are coming out as fast with as many different versions as they possibly can. These guys they're survivor. Tesla will clobber everybody except for the Chinese. The only reason there is that even though they've reduced their costs and whatnot, there is a stigma that was created by our own government. And now Americans are losing favor in the eyes of other parts of the world, China being the one in particular. So they're probably not going to be able to eclipse them. But remember, Tesla is running at a 40-second station time. That is phenomenal. Nobody in the U.S., none that I know of. Everybody goes to about 60, and that's about it. They're doing 40 seconds. Every 40 seconds, another car is coming off the line. Nobody's got that. I believe that that's why they're talking to Indonesia. Was kind of hoping that they'd go to Canada. But Indonesia makes a lot of sense as well. They'll be able to dump into the rest of the Asian Asian world, as it were. It'll be a little less expensive there.
Awesome.
Today's
All
video
right.
is brought to you
We're
by
good.
Enhance and their
Thank you.
Tesla
And then the rest of it is the Munro team sort of plugging some stuff. Please go to Munro Live's channel if you haven't subscribed yet. Make sure you go. I encourage you to go rewatch that video as well. There's a lot in there. I really think for like the next 3 to 5 years, I think the Sandy, Corey, and the Munro team have really given us what they think is the roadmap on how to think about Tesla in the next 3 to 5 years, how to think about the auto market in the next 3 to 5 years, and some of the financial implications from Tesla getting to, launching the Cybertruck at 35-37% margins, and Tesla potentially running at 40% margin from their vehicle perspective. The fact that Ford appears to be moving as quickly as humanly possible, which I think that in itself has a lot of data points, because if you view the Mach-E launch and the ramp, and if that's them going as fast as humanly possible, when you compare it to how the Model Y has ramped in parallel, you get a lot of information there. We can get into that. But anyway, Hans, what are your thoughts on the Cybertruck and whatever else was said there?
Yeah, I'm surprised at his conviction in how fast Ford is moving. That's good to see. I hope that they are successful moving forward, and hopefully they're moving quick on the back end. The part where he talked about a 60-second station time, that there's a car coming off the line every 40 seconds for Tesla, and then the best that competitors are doing is 60 seconds. That's huge. You're producing 1.5 cars for every car that a traditional OEM. And so however you want to measure that in CapEx or footprint or whatever, there's a lot that goes into that.
Can I kind of like put that within context without a compact car?
Yeah, that's without a compact car. Exactly. And it just goes back to reinforce Elon's point about long-term, our competitive advantage, our moat we're going to be the best people in the world at manufacturing. And so they already are that in the automotive industry based on that metric. And then we can look at it as far as EVs, their efficiency and capital spend versus manufacturing capacity far eclipses. This is the ROIC work that like Pierre Ferragu and some other people have done, showing that, not only are they exceptional at producing the cars once they have manufacturing capacity in place, but they're best in class at getting that manufacturing capacity installed as efficiently as humanly possible.
Rodden?
Yeah, I mean, I can echo all that. I guess maybe the thing I'm thinking about is like, where is there anything? Are there any flaws in the argument? Where are there holes, or where are there potential issues? And yeah, I guess that's probably a harder question.
Well, the way I think about it is like, if I look at how the traditional, call it analyst media, the bear side, everybody who sort of is what, in my opinion, are looking at this at a surface level. And if you were on the one space, I listened to the recording, which, Ross Gerber and Gordon Johnson got for a debate together for a debate yesterday, which happened to be my birthday, and it was like a great birthday gift from both of them. So thank you very much. It got very contentious and emotional, but they both know what they're doing, obviously. So props to both of them. But the common analysis which comes out of the bear side, so the Gordon side, is like Tesla dropped their prices 13 to 14%, which means that their margins will drop 13, like they will drop by 1,300 basis points or 1,400 basis points. They will go from 28% margin to 14% margin. That's not how economies of scale work. And this is like, I don't know why it's so hard for people to grasp this concept, or they're simply seeing a data point and they're just plopping it down, and they don't have the wherewithal to actually understand what it means that when you lower the price, you ship more units, and you ship more units through a factory with fixed cost. And the more units you ship through a fixed cost structure, your cost per unit goes down. It's just math. And I don't know why. I don't understand why this narrative has taken hold, right? I just truly don't understand. Now, one could make the argument, sure, you could have a situation where Tesla's margins do go down. They go down from 28% to 22%. They go down from 28% to 20%, or in the best case scenario to 24%, right? But it doesn't go down to 14%. That's just literally mathematically impossible unless Tesla is so bad at scaling that they've already baked in all their cost, and as they ship more units out the factory, their costs go up in proportion to how much they've lost, which I've never seen a company in the history of manufacturing where that applies to, especially if the company is 100% focused on manufacturing. So, and that's where I'm having a tough time grasping. Like, I can't take the bear side seriously. I really can't. Like, those bears that say that, I'm like, dude, like, you're just not doing math. You're just grabbing a number and just assuming, like what Sandy was saying, just grabbing it out of their butts and just throwing it into the air, and it just smells like a fart because it is. Because it is a fart, you know? So, so it becomes a question of what is Tesla's ability to, how many units can they ship with this new pricing, and what does that mean for earnings? That's really, I believe is the right lens to look through. What does it mean if Tesla can reach capacity of, say, 2 million cars per year, which is how much capacity they've built in now, and if the new pricing they have in place gets them to 2 million cars per year at, say, 23% margin, if you sit down and do the math, that implies more profits, more earnings in 2023 versus 2022. And then Hans and I were talking about this when we went live. The market has dropped their estimations for 2023 by 30-40% for earnings. But this implies that there's actually a growth in earnings, and you're not even talking about full self-driving or energy, right? So, like, where is this discussion in mainstream media? Where is this discussion outside of this? Like, or are we really that or am I really that stupid? Am I really that dumb? Right? That I'm making no sense, and I'm on hopium, and I literally don't understand how to use an Excel spreadsheet, right? So that's where my head is at with this whole thing.
Yeah, the other thing not to forget is insurance that we haven't talked about yet. Now I know that's kind of baked into the current margin structure, but as far as long-term value of a vehicle, if you can get even 10, 15, 20% take rate on insurance in your fleet over the lifetime of the vehicle, you can actually make really good money on selling insurance, which I know used to be a big talking point in the community, but it's something that we've kind of lost focus on here in the bearish run that we've had over the past few months.
Yeah. Robin, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just thinking, like, I used to do a thing where I would just look for I would set green flags and red flags, things that I want to see and things I don't want to see. And like the one that I'm trying to think about is like, what other models do they need or could be put in place if they have, like, if there isn't enough demand at the current prices, right? So is it worth bringing back a Model Y rear-wheel drive standard range where they cut another $1,500 to $3,000 to $4,000 out because they don't have that front motor, which, as Corey said, is cheaper, but it does add cost, right? So that is a sign to me that, like, if that car comes out, like, and they start putting it up on the EPA website and start testing it again, like, that's a sign that, like, they need it, right? But it's also a sign, which is sort of a red flag, but it's also a green flag, and that, like, maybe that opens up like a new model that, like, allows them to sell, like, whatever expanded capacity that they have. It's just a matter of how soon that is. So, like, the longer it takes for that car to come out is a green flag to me. But bringing it out is also a green flag because it expands. Like, it means that they're also, like, expanding the capacity, and, like, it's going to open up the market a lot. And it's like that graph that we've seen where the lower down the spectrum you go, like, the more you open up that market to, like, the more
it's a
people
highly
that can access.
demand or price elastic market where you can decrease the price of the vehicle by a couple $1,000s and it will make a 30, 40, 50% increase in your TAM.
Right.
Can I pull
Yeah,
up a chart on this topic? Just because so people can visualize what we're saying. So go ahead and pull up the last tweet I just shared, producer wife, with the line and the arrows, from Matthias Fons. Go ahead and click on that graph. So this is from Matthias Fons. Make sure you go follow him at Fons DK. So this is share of the U.S. car market by revenue addressable by price point in 2021. And so I'll help you read this graph. So the x-axis, so the bottom left to right, the bottom were 20, 40, 60, 80. That's the MSRP of a car. Okay, so how much a car costs. And so what this chart implies, if you go to the $60,000 thing on the bottom, you see where the line is around 5%, 6%. That means that cars priced around $60,000 have a share of roughly 5 to 6% market share in the United States. Okay. And if you go down the price curve, so if you go down to 50, like 50, 45-ish, it goes up to 40 to 10%. If you go up to down to $40,000 MSRP, those cars have a share of about 20%. If you go to 35,000, it's about 25%. If you go to 30,000, it's 35%. If you go to 20,000, right, it's almost 100%. So it's this weird spot that Tesla's in, that they're right on the cusp of, if they drop down their prices, say by $10,000 or $5,000, their market share explodes. Yeah. It's literally a vertical line. And they can do this either through compact car or through what Rodman just described, getting close to that by introducing lower price models that fit this sort of place. The arrows there for the Model Y and Model 3 rear-wheel drive, you can see where those cars are right now. This is based on the EV tax credit being included. So the Model Y long range with the $20,000, excuse me, I wish, the $7,500 price incentive from the government implies that the Model Y is working in an addressable market of about 20% of all vehicles sold in the United States. The Model 3 rear-wheel drive with the EV tax credit is closer to 25%. But if they get to, say, 30%, you automatically add 10% more market share. So if the EV car market is 14 million cars per year, 10% additional is an additional 1.4 million customers will consider a Tesla. And if, say, 20 to 30% of those people say, yep, I want a Tesla, that's an additional, say 30% of 1.4 is what? Like I call it like 450,000. That's an additional 450,000 unit sales in the United States just by dropping the price another $5,000 from 36. So that's how, just to contextualize what you just described, Hans. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but go ahead.
No, that's perfect. I love having that context. And so this is, the Model 3 Highland project is one of the things that's directly aimed at addressing this segment, trying to get an even lower priced Model 3 out there. And then, the point that Rodman was also making about this green flag / red flag of having these lower price models come out, one of the things that it does illustrate is Tesla's competitive position relative to all the other auto manufacturers in the amount of flexibility that they have and the number of levers that they can pull to navigate these tough times coming up that no one else has. Not only do they have industry leading, like industry destroying profit margins, both gross and net and operating, but they also have a very compact lineup of vehicles that are just, there are not that many cars that they sell. It's a very simple vehicle lineup. And so they can, both through introduction of next generation platform, but even just decontenting some of their existing platforms, sell lower price vehicles. And then, Cybertruck is going to be an incredibly high margin product once that gets up and ramped. So they have a lot of, they haven't done any marketing. Like they just have lever after lever after lever that they can pull. And whereas someone like GM, they're already, they don't have margins to decrease prices. They're already marketing their cars out the wazoo and they can't sell them, or they can't grow sales with the additional marketing that they have. They already offer a bazillion cars. They probably need to actually offer less, not more.
And they don't have scale.
And not on EVs, they don't.
Exactly.
So yeah. Well, they have reverse economies of scale because as they pump out less and less ICE vehicles through their fixed cost factories, like you were talking about earlier, well, now fixed cost absorption gets much higher in each and every ICE vehicle that they sell, which makes it less profitable, which makes it less able to subsidize their transition to EVs. And so, yeah, it's just a tough spot to be in for them.
For sure. Go ahead, Rodman, please.
So the last thing that I really want to point out on this whole, the price decrease and like how that's going to spur like more people being able to buy, is that you really have to think about the used car market as well. As the price of these ones go down, it's going to push the prices of the used cars down, and that's going to allow, if you can get a used Model 3 for around 30,000, like how many people are going to be all over that? And if you just go back to that graph real quick, you can just look at how many more people, like once you start getting down to this 30,000, like it starts a really rapid slope, right? So all these cars that get pushed into the secondhand market, third-hand market even, it's really just going to, like, if you think about all the people that will end up in a car that's so much better, and when you think about a 4 to 5 year old Model 3, like that car is almost as good as a current one because the software has all been updated and they're getting all the features that a new car. There's some things that are missing, like you won't have boombox and but like new cars, like my brother, one of my brother-in-laws just got one, and his doesn't have the vent feature, so he can't press on his screen and have press on his iPhone and like have the windows drop down when he's remotely. But like, there's just like things that go and come and go, but like it's still like an old Model 3 is going to be, if it's taken care of well, like the externals, like that car, like one of the big problems, like Corey said, was I think it was Corey, but like an ICE vehicle, one of the big things that causes wear over time is that it's dealing with all the high vibration and the heat and like dissipating all that stuff. And that stuff wears on the car over time. And it's what causes a lot of the value degradation of a car, because a brand new ICE vehicle performs a lot better than a used ICE vehicle. But an EV, like, there's none of that stuff, right? There's not as much wear and tear because of the engine being like an exploding, like a contained explosion every literally, yeah. So like the car just maintains its value because it doesn't wear down as fast, right? So as long as you take care of your car, like as long as it's a car that's been taken care of, like the interior and the exterior, and the battery isn't like treated like trash, like that car still has a lot of value just because of all the technology that is being added through software, right? And we can talk about, like, that's not even with FSD, right? Like there's like features that have been added, just like lane change, like the lane change cameras came in last year, and then like they have automatic the lane change cancellation. So you just hit the stop, and then when it detects that you've finished changing lanes, it just turns it off automatically. It's like, that wasn't a feature like a year ago. That wasn't a year. Yeah. Well, that wasn't a feature 4 years ago. But now, like all these things and like all the software updates, it's just as good as like a brand new car. So like
that's a point that's hard to grasp unless you're an owner and unless you've actually experienced. And the more people that get to experience that sort of game-changing nature, that your car gets better over time versus it getting worse over time, is just still not well understood, because still most people, the majority, the 99.9% of the global population doesn't own a Tesla. And so they don't understand this, it's fine. It's not good or bad. It's just, but it's a game-changing paradigm that truly changes the economics of owning a car. It changes what that asset does and how much value it holds. So, and I'm trying not to sound like an insane fanboy saying it, but that's just what happens when something gets better over time, objectively.
Right. I mean, I got a tweet response from someone that's like, that's what I would expect from a Tesla fanboy like you. And then I was like, but it's
It's true.
It's facts, dude. Yeah.
I know, it's so strange. Let me show one more
If you
tweet,
knew
and then
all
we'll
the true things, you'd
ahead.
be a fanboy too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Cult. Let's do it. Just kidding. Go ahead and bring up the tweet I just sent you. The one that I asked you to stage, producer wife, with the little chart. Perfect. So I just want to throw out one more data set as we're talking about what it means for Tesla to enter this sort of lower price level. So if Tesla is able to offer a Model Y configuration, say like a standard range plus rear wheel drive as an example, let's just assume that's the configuration. That's about $45,000 MSRP. So about $7,000 lower than where the dual motor long range is right now at 52.9. If they can get to 45-ish, it'll be cheaper to operate over 8 years than the lowest trim Toyota RAV4. So if you go ahead and click on that chart real quick, producer wife, I can sort of contextualize this for folks that are data nerds. So the math that I used is I introduced the EV tax credit. I introduced a fuel cost and a 45,000. What did I do wrong here? Something's wrong. I messed something up. The math doesn't check out. Because new net EV tax credit implies 50,000. So what did I say 45,000 on the tweet? So maybe it's 50,000 MSRP. Anyway, if you can get the total cost of, I don't know. No, that's right. Because that implies a $52,000. At 50,000, you bring it down to, okay, no, never mind. I'm just a crazy person right now, but this is essentially what I'm saying. The Model Y all-wheel drive standard range that you could sometimes get in inventory from time to time. Net EV credits, if you take out the $7,500 tax credit, it nets out to $43,490. With the fuel cost over 8 years at $3.30 per gallon for the Toyota RAV4, it gets about 30 miles per gallon combined. Over 8 years, the RAV4 LE costs about $12,500 to run in fuel. The Model Y costs about $5,000 in electricity at 117 miles per gallon equivalent over 8 years, with a average rate for electricity of 16 cents per kilowatt hour. And then the maintenance, which I drew from Car Edge, and I think this is conservative, to be completely honest, for the Model Y, but I'm just going to throw it out there. It's $3,700 over 8 years for the Model Y. For the RAV4, it's $4,400. Prop to the RAV4, they're extremely reliable gas cars. That's why their maintenance is so low. But that gap between the existing Model Y all-wheel drive long range, after the EV tax credits and fuel savings and maintenance savings, versus a Toyota RAV4 LE, which is the lowest trim Toyota RAV4 you can buy right now, is about a $6,000 to $7,000 gap between those two over 8 years. If Tesla can offer a model that's about that much lower, they now have a competitor that's a straight competitor to the best-selling SUV in the United States with the RAV4. It's a $6,000 to $7,000 gap. That's all they need to do. And I want to contextualize that because the RAV4 LE, the Toyota's probably making, I don't know, 6% margin on that, maybe 5% with the base level and no trims. Theoretically, if Tesla wanted to sell a Model Y that had the same margin as a Toyota 4 LE, they could do it today if they really wanted to. But then there's two things that they don't have. They don't have the scale to sell millions of these per year yet, but it's the levers there. And so this right here, I think encapsulates just what's about to happen to the car market. It's that the scaling of Tesla is going to really ramp. I really do believe so. And, people can spin this whole thing. You're spinning the price decrease as a positive. Okay, but it is. It is a positive. It means that Tesla's going to have more market share, and it means that they're going to be able to ramp their production. It means they're going to be able to leverage their manufacturing expertise. So I'm going to shut up now and give it to you guys. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, if they can do that rear wheel drive version, right? Like that's going to even make it like even closer, right? Because is that Toyota RAV4? That's a 4-wheel drive, all-wheel drive?
No, 4-wheel drive, the front wheel drive.
Okay, it's front wheel drive.
Bare bones RAV4 LE versus a Model Y all-wheel drive standard range Tesla.
It's like
there's only it's only a $6,000 difference. And forget about the performance. The Model Y can do it in 5 seconds. The RAV4 takes 2 years to get to 60. Okay. Just right. I'm kind of being an idiot, but you know what I mean.
I just want to say, like, if you have a rear wheel drive, I took my Model 3 into the snow in a rear wheel drive, and like it, like we've had BMWs that were rear wheel drive in snow, and like the difference is like insane because of the way the traction control is just like insane. It's like because
and the weight.
Yeah, go ahead.
And the weight, like the weight.
Oh yeah.
Distribution, it's much more planted in the rear than an internal combustion engine where you've got your engine up front. So having that nice center of gravity, low center of gravity, both, and then a heavier vehicle really helps the way that it handles in the snow.
It's also because the lag time between you putting an input on the pedal or taking your foot off the pedal and having or let's say the lag time between it detecting that there's slippage in a wheel and the amount of time it takes to alter that wheel, like it's so much faster than like having to let off, like, okay, we need to decrease the amount of gasoline going into the engine, and then we have to wait for it to go through and like hit like all the different linkages, or I guess it'd probably be more, and then like getting the brakes to work. But it just, because it can just tell the motor like instantly as fast as electricity travels, like it's controlling that motor so finely that like we were just driving through and I was really worried because there was like 2 or 3 inches of snow and we were going up hills and there's like cars sliding back down the hill and we're just I'll go around, and we just flew up the hill and I was like, this is crazy. And it was the first time I had driven that car in snow. Like just the amount of confidence I had and it had. And then like then you throw in all-wheel drive and it's like game over. Like it's such a good car in snow. But I'm sure there's like people out there that like drive in snow regularly. I'm in California. I don't. But,
yeah. My dad has a Model 3 rear-wheel drive long range, and they get snow in PA, and he's driven it once already. But he haven't had a lot of snow. But he's like, I'm like, are you worried? He's like, no.
Yeah,
I ain't worried. So
the car is like so,
and it's on all seasons too. So
yeah.
Hans, I know you have a video you want to show us. Go ahead and walk us through what you want to. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So this is just really an expansion on, and maybe if we could slide the time forward just a couple seconds. We don't have to watch the video, but this was your conversation this week with Tom Nash, and he dug into. So there's one point. Keep going. Maybe in the 30 range. Yeah. So if we can get that chart as big as we can right in the middle. So this is a pricing curve. What do you like? Is there a specific name for this, Farzad?
The Laffer curve? Isn't it?
Do you?
Oh, yeah, like a normal distribution, I guess you want to call it? Like that.
Yeah, I didn't know if within pricing it had a different name. So in taxes, this is called a Laffer curve. And so, yeah, you've got an ideal price, a break-even price on an upper bound and a lower bound. And so it's trying to like, how do you make the most money on a product? And so you kind of have some wiggle room between you don't want to sell your product for less than it costs you to make if you want to make a profit on that product. But then there's also a price point at which if you raise the price too high, you'll literally sell 0 units. And so that's kind of your lower bound and your upper bound on the range over which you can make profit on this product. And this doesn't really take into account elasticity of demand or those types of things too well, somewhat. But that ideal price there in the middle is the place where you make the most dollars, not the best gross margins, the most dollars. So the further away from, or to the right you go, the higher your profit margins are. But if you go too far that way, you don't sell enough units to end up making more money. And then vice versa, if you go the other direction, you can sell more units, but you're not making enough profit margin to maximize the dollars worth of profit that you bring in. And so this is the model that you can use to say, okay, what's the way that I can maximize dollars of profit, not profit margins, but dollars of profit that I make on a product. And so the thought here was that at release time, the Model Y and the Model 3 were roughly pretty close to that ideal price right in the middle there, where they're maximizing dollars. But through 2020, 2021, and even somewhat into 2022, we had so much demand and not enough supply that in order to keep the wait times from going out a year, Tesla was able to move all the way down the right side of that curve, say maybe halfway in between the ideal price and the break-even price on maximum, because that's all the supply that they had relative to the amount of demand that there was. And so we were running at way inflated gross margins, but if they could have waved a magic wand and produced as many cars as they wanted to, that they would have made a lot more money by bringing the price back to that ideal price, which is probably somewhere closer to where the prices are today. And so these price cuts, while they may be a reduction in overall gross margin, that this gets us back a lot closer to the release price of these vehicles. And then if we assume that we've got some cost of goods sold improvement over time through the production processes, maybe raw materials are costing us a little bit more, maybe labor is costing us a little bit more right now, but hopefully we've had some process improvements to where that's kind of offsetting that we could be, these prices starting a week ago could be close to that ideal price that maximizes the total amount of revenue. And then, if you then say, okay, that's the price that Tesla lists. Oh, and by the way, now we've got EV tax incentives that are $7,500 to most consumers on most models.
Profit.
Well, then that is just pure money in the bank that drives their demand. So now they have almost an unlimited demand at their ideal price. And we may very well see insane EPS numbers that really blow expectations out of the water at the end of Q1.
Not investment advice. Yeah. Or financial advice.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't agree more. By the way, shout out Tom. If you don't know Tom Nash, make sure you go check out his channel. He's my Russian brother from another mother. He is not a plant or a spy. I asked him behind the closed doors and he said, "No way, Jose. I don't know Putin." I'm giving him a hard time. I love that guy. So it's like again, I go back to if I say what I'm about to say, I'm going to sound like a crazy fanboy, and I guess I am. Right? But the lack of understanding or the lack of willingness for folks to be honest about this discussion, that the price decreases are indeed a good thing for Tesla long term, is I feel like it's kind of like either it highlights a certain level of dishonesty, or it highlights that there hasn't been enough due diligence done in the sector that you're covering. Because the fact that Tesla doesn't have a dealership network, I think in itself, within all this context that we talked about and what Sandy brought up, is really what I believe the nail in the coffin that says Tesla will 100% become a mass market manufacturer that is going to be able to retain class-leading margins for the long term, because they have an entire piece of the puzzle that every single other person uses in the United States that's driving costs up to the consumer. And as you're riding this price curve down, every single dollar you can yank from that ability to get that car out to the customer becomes a huge competitive advantage, especially if those companies you're going up against haven't invested nearly as much in the scale of the new technology that's coming out. Mm-hmm. And there is a reason why companies like Ford, GM, and Volkswagen and everybody else are trying to start where Tesla started, which is at the top of the price range. They're trying to go low volume, high price first. Low volume, high price first. We can't even talk about the Chinese manufacturers in this respect, because they're doing it differently and they have a completely different backing, which bodes very poorly for everybody else except probably Tesla here, right? But there's a reason why these manufacturers are doing that, is because they don't have the scale to go to the lower levels to make money. And then you layer on the dealership network on top of it, forget it. Because then they would have to artificially prop up the cost of the vehicle, essentially, or they have to artificially they're going to have to try to get the car produced at such a price so that when it gets to the dealership, the customer is willing to pay that price, and then the dealership and the manufacturer both make money. So you've introduced this giant a variable into the equation that, for anybody who's been following Tesla, I feel like everybody understands this very well. Even folks that don't follow Tesla, they understand the dealership model really well. But this is where that equation breaks for everybody who has a dealership network. Because if you're really trying to get to the affordable price, your dealership ain't going to try to pocket the money. It's going to be Tesla. And Tesla, if they really want to win and maximize the capacity and advance the advent of sustainable transport, like Hansa said, you drop those levers, you pull those levers that lower the cost as low as humanly possible, and you're doing so in such an efficient manner that the only place that loses, quote unquote, is one entity, and that's Tesla. Whereas if anybody else had to do that, you impact an entire supply chain, an entire service network, and an entire dealer network. And that in itself is super complex. And we only have to go back to what Corey said on the video with Sandy, that the top richest people in Michigan, some of the top richest people in Michigan are dealership owners. Why is that? Because they've been skimming off the top this whole time in mass market vehicle manufacturing. And folks, I don't think might be up to speed yet that Tesla, realistically, from the research I've done and the research I'm sure you guys have done, and everybody who's probably watching this video, or most people have, is that, because we're also obsessed with this story, is that the only true, real mass market EV manufacturer on planet Earth outside of a couple players in China is Tesla. And everybody else is playing catch up, and some of them are extremely behind. And now this is where the tire meets the road. We are now at the point with these price decreases where the tire is meeting the road. And only those that are best positioned to come out with a mass market affordable car are going to be able to win. And I can only think of one car company that can do that. That's not Chinese.
From the US. Yep.
From the US.
The thing that it makes me think of, that it doesn't tie in the dealership network part, but the thing that it reminds me of back in the late 90s, early 2000s, when Walmart was just rolling out supercenters all across the country, and you lived in a smallish town that finally you were going to get a Walmart, and you knew all the mom and pop grocery shops and little things like those places were hosed. Why was that? Well, Walmart had a scale that those other little stores could not compete with. They had pricing power that those stores could not compete with. They just had a whole host of advantages. And so, someone's going to say, yeah, well, GM's way bigger than some mom and pop shop. Not when it comes to EVs. Tesla is the Walmart of EVs in this analogy. They make way more than anybody else, apart from BYD, who has a long way to go just to satisfy the demand in China. And then another point that Corey made on y'all's discussion this week that was great was, more than likely the next battleground for Chinese EV makers is not the United States, it's Europe. And so that does, give GM and Ford and the local people a little bit more time. But yeah, when you've got a company at the scale of Tesla that still doesn't have those lower end vehicles that BYD has and will get there, man, that's just scary.
I would just think, for me, in my mind, like the whole US market is like not really up for debate anymore. Like I just, like, if you're paying attention, there's a lot of signs that they're not agile, they're not fast enough to respond to the changes necessary to get them to the next stage. They might have some kind of existence supporting the existing ICE vehicle fleets, but I just don't see them getting to a scale that's necessary to actually survive. It's just too late, too little, and it's so, like, the real thing that I'm starting to focus on and pay a lot more attention to are the people talking about BYD versus Tesla. And BYD, like there's a lot of people who we just don't have a lot of exposure to those vehicles. But I do see people talking about it, and either that have that exposure or who have been paying attention. And it's hard to say that BYD is ahead, because because of the influence of hybrid vehicles, but
Mhm.
there is definitely there are people who can show you electric vehicles made by Chinese manufacturers that are selling, and they're pretty close to the prices that Tesla is selling, and they have features that Tesla doesn't, while Tesla has features that the others won't. But
Mhm.
you can talk about FSD, but like FSD isn't really working there yet. It's not clear how well it's working yet there, or when it will be available there. So like that's not really a thing you can rely on. So I think there is more to worry about in that market, like
Mhm.
as far as a competitive, like it's not a place where Tesla should be complacent. And if they were to
Sure.
do something like create like some kind of variant of the Model 3 or Y that catered more to the Chinese population, like what they want in a car, and there was like one configuration for that, that's something that I would see as a really good green flag,
Yeah.
right?
That's why I think that
Yep.
I think the compact's coming out in China next year. I'm convinced. I'm
Yep.
convinced.
Yeah, but it still has to be. It's not just the prices has to be lower, but even when people are shopping for, this price, they are expecting something that's very
The
similar to
feature
a
set
German
has to be
car,
competitive.
right?
Yeah.
It's really like it's beyond styling. It's like Tesla has a great interior, but you would not. It's really hard to call it a luxury interior, even in the Model S and X. Like it's very toned down, and maybe people are used to having those vehicles kind of toned up, right? And I think that is something that people do want. Like here, like I do see people buying those BMW, whatever, I think it's the i4, like the SUV. And it's like, when I saw Munro's their review of it, it's like, it's got like these crystal like things in it. And it's just like, it's so garish to me that I was like, I can't believe that's in BMWs, but that's what they have to do to like compel people back to these vehicles, right? Because they have no substance underneath. They have to put all these, like, it has to look like a Swarovski store inside for people to want to go inside, right?
Yeah, it's just culturally that's what they expect. Real quick, before I throw it to you over, Hans, and then I'll then we'll do Q&A for a brief moment. So real quick, Dan Ives, fellow Penn Stater, we are, for anybody in the comments, we are. Dan Ives from Dives Tech at Dives Tech. Our proprietary China EV survey this week had nearly 70% responded that the most recent price cuts have positively influenced their decision to more likely purchase a Tesla Y, proving the price cuts have been a home run success out of the gate. China EV survey bullish for Tesla. So this is a sort of Dan Ives' firm doing a survey in Tesla. So kind of along the lines of what you're talking about, Tesla not being complacent and stuff. Some of the data sets coming in from the recent price decreases, at least if Dan's data is correct and representative, which, I think he's put out really good research in the past. So I do trust his data sets. I do believe that this is a good representation of what's going on, but that doesn't sort of explain, it doesn't make up the fact that for them to continue to be successful in the future, it's price cuts and awesome cars and awesome features, and to ensure that people want to own the car. But this is a very good first data point here. I just wanted to share just along the lines you were saying.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Hans, go ahead, and then we'll do a brief Q&A, and we'll go over to our Discord discussion.
Yeah, we can move straight to Q&A.
You sure? Okay,
Yep.
Perfect. All right, so we'll do that for about 5-10 minutes. For those that have just joined the channel, thank you very much. Don't forget to hit the like if you enjoy what you're seeing so far. Every Friday, we do a community forum with members of my community for about an hour and a half. And then for the last hour, we take it over to our Discord, our private Discord, and we have basically a conversation within our community about whatever topics the community wants to talk about. So if you want to be part of that group, consider becoming a patron using the link in the description below, or joining through YouTube right below this video, clicking the join button. Sales. All right. Go ahead and pull up some questions, producer wife, and we'll hit a few and then we'll go. Jambe, question. Do you think Mexico will be the next official announced Gigafactory? It seems like we get this question every week. I think, was it one of you guys that predicted that? No, I think it was Nicholas said that they would do more than one.
Yeah.
I think if there's an announcement for this, it'll come Investor Day on March 1st. There might be more than one, but I really believe Mexico is going to be part of the equation. What do you guys think?
I would agree.
Okay. Yeah. We'll see. I mean, wherever they put it, I think I think location is impactful, but I think them announcing a new gigafactory period is positive, regardless. Location, I'm not so much worried about it, but it implies great things for the local economy in Mexico.
I do want to see, them move ahead with the expansion in China. That's a big one.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm of the camp, a lot of people are predicting a lot more locations. I think we do need more than we have, but I don't think we need as many more as 10 that a lot of people have said, just because I think
bring that up on the main screen so we can look at this live. I think this is just going to be a product of supply and demand, but if you track inventories right now, I think they've kind of hit a relative equilibrium. But what do you guys think? Go ahead and click on Model Y on the new and existing inventory. It's like the second section under inventory data. You see where it says Model Y? Yeah, perfect. Click on that. So this is inventory levels for Model Y for the last 120 days. And all the way to the right, you can see sort of the inventory has leveled off. So they came out with a huge price decrease in, what was that, January 10th, 12th-ish, 11th, 13th maybe. And then there was a huge drop in US new Model Y inventory levels in the United States. And then for the last, call it week, it has stabilized around, call it 300 new Model Ys in inventory on average. And then we're entering the weekend, and I'm curious to see if we're going to see another drop on the weekend, because that's when people usually go to dealerships and buy cars. But what do you think, Rodman? And we'll get Hans here back once. Oh, he's got his camera back. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean,
What's fascinating to me is if it is a mega pack or if energy focused factory, I think that implies a pretty insane valuation for the company in the long term. But I'm not gonna make comments on the stock price as it relates to this. How do you guys think
it's less likely to be a mega pack factory unless they have a different lithium source than the Texas place, because he was talking about reaching volume on the lithium refining in about 2 years, and knowing that that's ambitious. So it's too early to be announcing a location in Mexico that would be significantly relying on that lithium supply. But they could, if they have a separate supply of lithium for it, it could potentially be, but I think the most likely is probably still cars.
okay, so Donald, I'll answer this in a different way. Let's pretend that Mexican Gigafactory becomes a thing. I would just say that if it happens, Tesla will always optimize everything, right? So if there's space and there's lithium coming in, I would expect batteries to be built and they'd possibly go to megapacks. But yeah, it's just kind of hard to say. But I would expect that if it makes sense and there's highly logical people there, they're going to optimize the heck out of everything, and they're gonna do what makes sense, and that does make sense.
That makes sense. All right, let's do one last one. We're getting meta here now. Which one's producer wife gonna pick? Max Pelletier. Is that French? Thank you, Max. Question: what is your reaction regarding Archimoto's closing of their factory, and what does this mean for Rivian, Lucid, Aptera, etc.? It's freaking hard to be a manufacturer of anything that's large, and Archimoto's probably going to be one of many. I think there's some in that list that will survive. I do think Lucid will survive because they have a ton of Saudi backing, and they'll just figure out how to make it work because they have basically endless money. Rivian, I want to survive, but that's just just becomes a function of how much cash they have versus what their production ramp looks like. How do you guys think about this?
I mean, each one's an independent company, right? So, like there were figures for Lucid outproducing their deliveries by a pretty significant margin, so that's not a good sign. Aptera, I think they're still pretty young. They still haven't started the production, so they're kind of in a better spot because they haven't sunk a lot of costs into building factories yet. I mean, I'm not completely up to date on all these companies, but... And then Rivian, scary for Cybertruck coming out.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Yeah. The one with Rivian is how much money does Jeff Bezos want to sink into that to make sure that he doesn't ever have to buy Tesla anything? So it's similar in some ways to the Saudi backing for Lucid, and hopefully that holds up for Lucid so that they can eventually come down market. The thing that I first of all, remember, prototypes are easy, production is hard. So Elon was telling us that this was likely for a lot of these companies for a long time. And that was the place that Archimoto got stuck. They just didn't have the speed, the agility. Like, it was a red flag that it took them so long just to get the product right. So if it took them that long to get the product right, the likelihood that they could go from there to then doing the hardest thing, which is scaling production, was low. Unfortunately, I love the product and was really excited both for the FUV and the MLM. So it is kind of sad to see. Hopefully someone can acquire at least their IP, if not their assets, and get that back up off the ground. But we'll just have to wait and see where that goes. The other thing that I think about is when Elon made those comments about how a lot of these companies are going to go bankrupt. I think he knew what he was going to have to do. And there's a account on Twitter that's Tesla Thomas, I believe, that I was reading. He worked directly with, was it Jerome Guillen potentially back in 2012, 2013? And he was saying that these price cuts that we just had were basically on the roadmap that Jerome Guillen had in his mind 10 years ago.
Nice.
And that this was basically something that Tesla has known that they would, as they drive down the cost of, like, once they reach scale, then they're going to really turn the screws on the rest of the auto industry to push them forward. And so I wonder if basically Elon knew that he was going to go so aggressive on making sure that EVs happen and doing everything necessary, not leaving this to chance, not leaving this to anyone else, that in the process of doing that, he was going to make it so hard for any other competitors to survive that he was basically going to drive nails in the coffin for the other companies. And it's not that he doesn't want them to succeed. It's that that's what is necessary to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy, because no one else is going to be able to reach the type of scale necessary to accelerate that on a meaningful time frame.
You got it. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. And like it again, comes back to, if Tesla is really going to become a mass market EV manufacturer, they cannot become mass market selling cars at over $50,000. It's just impossible. There will not be enough people buying vehicles. So the investing thesis, though, is that when Tesla is a mass market vehicle maker making 10 million cars a year, their goal of 20 million cars per year, a lot of the bulls would say, myself included, that they can do this at very high profit margins because of how low their cost basis will become, because of how good they're going to be in manufacturing in relation to every other player on planet Earth for at least a 5-10 years. And that is the investing thesis for Tesla. I would encourage everybody to, at the very least, attempt to view the lens through that. Try to look through it there. And just throw out the PE for Ford, throw out the PE for GM. Well, car maker, mass market manufacturer is getting a 5 PE. Great, that's because they're bloated as hell and nobody's buying them anymore and they're not growing. They're just not growing, right? So it's a reflection of that. So do the math.
Operating profits suck.
Exactly. And they're burdened by a dealership network and a certain work culture, right? So that becomes the investing thesis. Is even if Tesla does become mass market, and even if their average selling price goes down to $30,000 per vehicle, what's their average cost basis? Can they get to $15,000 per vehicle? Can they get to $20,000 per vehicle? And if they can, and manufacturing costs is say $18,000 to $20,000 per vehicle, and they're selling them on average from between 28 and 30,000, that's a lot more palatable for the traditional consumer, especially in 5 to 10 years with inflation. That is still a 33% margin. A 33% margin for a mass market manufacturer is completely bananas. That's the math. And then I think for me as a bull, that is how I'm looking at it. And I think long-term that's realistic. But anyway, I'm going to shut up. I'm going to take it to the private Discord. If you want to join us, Patreon link in the description. Join us through YouTube below. Hans, Rodman, thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone
Happy
out
birthday.
there.
Yeah, thank you. And by the way, these guys put together one of the cutest things I've ever seen. I showed my wife this morning when she woke up, and I was like, my heart melted. So that was so, and I'm going to keep it to myself. I'm not going to share it with anybody. Thank you all very much. Seriously, because that meant a lot. Honestly, you guys are incredible. I'm so lucky to have you guys. Seriously. All right, everybody, come join us on Discord, Patreon, or YouTube. Link below. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Have a great weekend.